appears that for the number of times that people have been saying that these independent or third party candidates would not actually do anything or accomplish much, it appears that is not the case. And I have some new polling numbers for you. I want to get started with this clip here from News Nation about RFK Jr. 1 in 7 vote. This is important for people to see. And then I have recent numbers that I received yesterday to show you just how much the independent candidates and third party are actually shaking up this race. This is important for people to see. Listen to this.
All right, welcome back to the Hill. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. looking to throw a wrench potentially into the 2024 presidential election. He is expected to announce early next week that he'll be running as an independent. New polling suggests that this could spell trouble for both President Biden and former Trump. The new survey shows the two frontrunners at just over 30%, with RFK Jr. sitting at 14%.
So at this point in time, RFK Jr. was sitting at 14%. This is right before he declared he was running as an independent. Wait till you see where he's sitting now. And look at where Joe Biden was 31%, Donald Trump was 33% in a three-way presidential matchup.
Elizabeth Vargas, come on in, joining us now to discuss. Hey there, Elizabeth. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Yeah, we made it on a crazy week. What do you make of that? I mean, 14%, you know, the pack for RFK Jr. was saying they were at 17, 19, and we were like, yeah, but that's the pack. This is a legitimate Reuters poll having him at 14.
Yeah, he's definitely appealing to a core group of voters. The question is where does he pull those voters from? It's interesting. I talked to a Republican strategist who said that he was up in New Hampshire, and I was asking him which of the Republican candidates might have a chance of coming close, at least, to former President Trump. And he said, actually, the most signs I saw in New Hampshire were for Bobby Kennedy. So it says something. He has an appeal. And a lot of people who are Trump supporters find Bobby Kennedy very appealing. We, in fact, know that a lot of Trump backers have been also backing Kennedy, perhaps as a spoiler. So maybe his decision to jump in as an independent will change things up. I don't know. It's interesting. I asked him, Blake, in the town hall that we had here on News Nation with him, that question of whether or not he would ever run as an independent. And he said, absolutely not. I'm a Democrat. I was born a Democrat. We're a family of Democrats. He was very passionate about it, and he's now changing his tune.
You know, you mentioned that there's the thinking that maybe he actually does draw more from Republicans, in this case, potentially Donald Trump, than Democrats. We know his stance on vaccines, right?
Yes.
There was an interesting poll about COVID.
And
about
lots
whether
of
you were likely
conspiracies,
to
by the way. There's lots of conspiracies.
Yeah.
And I'll stop there because then they get into the jab and stuff like that. But it says partisan views on the jab, and it says likely to have already received the updated jab, and it says 69% of Democrats did, 28% of Republicans did, and 51% of independents. Now, that was right before he announced that he was running as an independent. Let me show you where he's at right now, because this is going to blow your mind if you have not seen this yet. As of recent, this is the recent Quinnipiac poll. Right now, RFK Jr. is now sitting at 22% in a three-way matchup of him, Joe Biden, and Donald Trump, which means, and we'll get into the nitty-gritty in a second, which means that RFK Jr.'s poll numbers increased after he left the Democratic Party. Now, if we pay attention to these numbers, this proves something that I've been saying for a while, which is that Biden supporters are not flocking to RFK Jr. What I said is that the people who are going to support RFK Jr. are former Trump supporters, independents, and primarily libertarians. Most of us on the left, for the most part, the lefties, are not flocking to RFK Jr. Some of that has to do with his position in reference to Israel and Palestine. Some of it has to do with the fact that he just has not spoken to the left audiences. We haven't seen him on Useful Idiots. He hasn't been on Bad Faith. He ain't been on this show. I don't think they'll ever let him come on this show, but he hasn't been on Bad Faith. He hasn't been on, has he been on Secular Talk? No, I don't think he's been on Secular Talk, or I don't think so. No. So yeah, he hasn't been on the gray zone. Remember that conversation was supposed to happen with him and Max Blumenthal. Did not happen. So as I said a couple of months ago, he is getting the support from independents, libertarians, and former Trump supporters. And when he decided to run as an independent, that actually increased his poll numbers. Now, we're going to get into this clip here from One. It says the U.S. may see a three-way contest in 2024 presidential polls. If this happens, this is huge.
In the two-party political landscape of the United States, the stage is set for a hypothetical three-way contest in the year 2024. Apart from the main rivals, the incumbent President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump, this time a third contestant is gaining traction. A recent poll showing Robert F. Kennedy Jr. with 22% support. The latest Quinnipiac University survey, in fact, showing that Biden got 39% of the vote, Trump with 36%, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. with 22%.
So as I predicted, for the people who said RFK Jr. would hurt Joe Biden, it appears RFK Jr. hurts Donald Trump. Now, we can also argue again, too, that some of the people that are voting independent that always either vote independent or third party as well, regardless. So some of that is in there as well. We also have to remember that the Green Party right now does not have a presidential candidate. So we have to wait and see who is announced through that as well. And from what I understand, the Libertarian candidate, Lars, I forget dude's last name, doesn't seem to be performing as well, from what I understand, but it's still kind of early. But this is exactly what I predicted would happen.
The overall 22%, by the way, does not suggest that Kennedy Jr. can yet break through the two-party system. But the bigger threat his nomination poses to Biden and Trump is the possibility of siphoning just enough votes from one of them to swing an otherwise coin flip competition. The poll surveyed 1,610 self-identified registered voters between the 26th and the 30th of October. And when the independents were removed, the poll found that in the race between Biden and Trump, 47% of the voters would support the Democratic incumbent over his Republican predecessors, 46%.
Now, this is how close it is. This is the poll when they remove RFK Jr. from the poll. Okay, so when it's just Donald Trump and just Joe Biden, 47% versus 46%. So obviously very close between Biden and Trump. And we'll go into some of the things I want to show you from this poll because they include Cornel West in one of these polls as well. This mouse is annoying. I think I need to put batteries in this mouse or something. I just hate how it does this. Sorry, guys. Anyway, I want to jump down to this part right here, which is general election. So we went over those numbers. Now, general election with independent candidates. When the hypothetical 2024 general election matchup broadens to include environmental lawyer, we're not going to say the other part. It's ridiculous. RFK Jr., who is running as an independent candidate, Biden receives 39% support. Trump receives 36% support. And Kennedy receives 22% support. Among independents, 36% support Kennedy, 31% support Trump, and 30% support Joe Biden. So RFK Jr. is capturing, sorry, I just wanted to make this bigger. He is capturing a significant portion of the independents, the registered independents. When progressive activist Cornel West, who is running as an independent candidate, is added to make a 4-person hypothetical 2024 general election matchup, voters give Biden 36%, Trump 35%, Kennedy 19%, and West 6%. So something happens here. When you add Cornel West into this equation, all of a sudden, RFK Jr.'s 22% is now down to 19%. So I appear what may be happening, it may be some people may like both of them or whatever. And Biden is at 36%, Trump is at 35%. So this is interesting. This is interesting. Among independents, 33% support Kennedy, 30% support Trump, 27% support Biden, and 8% support Cornel West. So you see, again, once they add in Cornel West, in reference to independent voters, the numbers change. Let's go on here. With minority and younger voters seeming intrigued, Kennedy, for now, enjoys the kind of demographic support his charismatic father and uncles generated decades ago. Enthusiasm. I just wanted to show this. In measuring motivation to vote in next year's presidential election, 48% of voters say they are more motivated to vote than in past presidential elections. Everybody hear that? 9% say they're less motivated. 42% say they're just as motivated as usual. Why do you feel people are more motivated to vote this time around? I think it's because there's more options. Now, some of you are wondering, how could RFK Jr.'s support have increased? He's horrible on Israel and Palestine. Well, for one, not everyone has heard his position in reference to Israel and Palestine. Not everyone's on Twitter. Not everyone's seen these interviews that RFK Jr. has had. And also, he hasn't really, with the exception of the interview on Rising, when Bree did challenge him on that, he hasn't really sat down with someone who's been over there in Gaza and has actually seen what Palestinian people are going through. He hasn't sat down with Max Blumenthal. He hasn't sat down with Katie Halper. He hasn't sat down with Anya Parampil. Like, these are all people that have been over there. Like, so they know what they saw. So the thing is I think a lot of the talks and things that he's had as well, from the videos that I've seen, it seems like this particular issue, you got to remember, until October 7th, a lot of people weren't even paying attention to what's happening in Israel and Gaza. Since October 7th, things have changed. So some people may not even realize how he feels about this particular issue, especially if he's mainly focusing on what happened during the pandemic. And if he's focusing on censorship, you know, so there's that. Now, there's also a donor issue as well. I talked about the donor issue with Cornel West. Here's a donor issue with RFK Jr. RFK Jr.'s donor data reveals his 2024 threat. So again, I predicted this as well. RFK Jr. is collecting checks from past Donald Trump donors at a much higher rate than former Joe Biden contributors, a sign the independent presidential hopeful may pull more from the Republican electorate than Democratic voters. This is important. This is what I've been trying to tell people. A political analysis of campaign finance records also show that Kennedy's bid has drawn millions of dollars from donors who kept their wallets shut in the last two presidential elections, suggesting he is activating people who have been turned off by what major parties have been offering. And I want to let you guys know, RFK Jr. raised over raised over $11 million this month. So this is not a grassroots campaign. And I've explained this before. Like, he has people like David Sachs who are hosting fundraisers for him, which David Sachs is also host fundraiser for Vivek Ramaswamy and Ron DeSantis as well. So he all over the place. But the thing is, he's taking big money. And remember what Jill Stein told me when she was on this show. She said the way that someone like RFK Jr. may be able to get on the ballot in all these states is just by buying your way on the ballot. You can do that. If you have the money, you can just buy your way on it. And you don't have to worry about getting all these signatures, yada, yada, right? Now, it goes on to say, though both parties insist Kennedy will be a non-factor in the campaign, there's clear anxiety about his potential impact, especially among Republicans. The analysis of Kennedy's campaign donations as of the most recent filing deadline shows why. His large dollar donor base has a clear Republican lean. That also fits with the limited polling that suggests Kennedy might draw more support from Republican-leaning donors. And we're just seeing this as well. Most of the 10 million Kennedy raised from large dollar donors through September 30th came from voters who did not make a federal donation during either of the 2016 or the 2020 election cycles. See? And here's that chart. Most of RFK's money has come from donors who have not given to either party recently. What that means is that his campaign is activating people who were kind of just disillusioned with donating to campaigns in the past and now are inspired to do so. Now, let me go here. So it shows you he's raised over $5 million in small dollar donations, over $1.4 million in large dollar donations with Democrat history. He's raised over $2 million large dollar donations with Republican history. And then he's raised $6.6 million large dollar donors with no recent donation history at all. So don't sleep on RFK Jr. And I think mainstream media could be making a tragic mistake by just assuming he's just going to go away and ignoring him. Now, one of the questions that's been raised before, who do you think he would pick as one of his, as a running mate, right? I've mentioned this before. I'm going to show it again here. I think his pick would be Tulsi Gabbard or someone like Tulsi Gabbard. They agree when it comes to funding for Ukraine. And they also agree in reference to Israel and Palestine. They both back Israel unequivocally. Here's a cringe statement here from Tulsi Gabbard to show you exactly what I'm talking about. This mouse is annoying. There we go.
I don't know if Kamala knows what she's up to, but the reality here is when you look at things like what Representative Cori Bush is saying, what the squad is saying, what so many of these other people are saying who are accusing Israel of committing a genocide, it is the height of hypocrisy because they're apologists and supporters of these Islamist Hamas terrorists who are calling for a genocide, the extermination of all Jews, not just in Israel, but around the world. And we're seeing this being carried out by these violent mobs and threats and other things that are happening against Jewish people literally around the world. And the worst part is they're doing this under the guise of, well, we care about innocent people and we don't want people to get hurt, when in fact, they are in essence supporting and apologizing for the barbaric actions of Hamas against innocent women, children, and civilians.
I called it.
So you see, notice he's using the same language, the barbaric language.
Creating the monster, like they're Dr. Frankenstein. And now the monster in their progressive wing is turning against them. But they're trying to pretend like this is kind of a shocking development. It's not a shocking development. No. This has always been there, but it's also deeply anti-American, is it not?
It is, and it is against the very foundational principles and values of who we are as a country. These Democrats, they have called people like me an Islamophobe for many years just for speaking the truth about radical Islam, about the...
They had good reason for doing that.
The threat that this Islamism poses to the freedom and peace and security of the American people and people around the world.
Well, do you believe, as do some of these Republicans in the Senate, that we should be bringing in more Afghan refugees? We brought in, what, 80, 90,000? We didn't vet any of them. I'm sure some of them are great people and helped us in Afghanistan. But do we have 80,000 interpreters or drivers? I mean, I don't think so.
There are many, unquestionably.
Yeah.
But just like we're so concerned about Biden's open borders and the fact that we've got millions of people coming in who are not vetted in any way, shape, or form, who have not been checked.
But they don't share our values, to Nigel Farage's point as to what you're seeing in England.
Right.
This is, they say, oh, you can't call it a clash of civilizations. Why not? It is a clash of civilization. No women's rights, no belief in pluralism, you know.
Oh, now all of a sudden you care about women's rights? Now all of a sudden you care about women's rights, right? This woman, Laura Ingraham, you guys got to understand, she's an actress. Like, this is not real. What you see here, this is not real.
The dignity of the individual, free expression, none of that.
No.
That's not on the table.
No, and that is the hypocrisy of seeing these, you know, the LGBTQIA activists out there holding and waving the trans flag combined with the Palestinian flags. Like, they don't,
that's a new level.
They don't know and understand what this Islamist ideology is, this radical Islam ideology where they actually want to kill people. They want to kill those people specifically.
Tulsi, they have to tie Ukraine to Israel because they know.
You guys see what's happening here? See, this is why so many Americans believe that people who practice like the Muslim faith, this is why so many Americans believe that those people are terrorists, because of the shit that Tulsi Gabbard is saying right here. Never read the Quran, like never, you know, just this kind of rhetoric and this kind of language.
Ukraine
won't stand on its own.
It's not
that funding and again, they're trying to cheat the American people through their representatives by saying, okay, you support and you want to stand with Israel. Well, guess what? We're going to sneak in all of this other money that we're going to take out of your pocket and your bank account to go and support something that increasingly Americans are understanding.
It's not
this
working.
Proxy war against Russia is pushing us closer to nuclear war, and it's not in our best national security interests to do that.
So I seem to remember earlier this year when I was on Rising, I told people that Tulsi Gabbard, if it were up to me, I would not have invited Tulsi Gabbard to speak at the Rage Against the War Machine rally because Tulsi Gabbard is not anti-war. And as time has gone by, we have seen that some of the other speakers also are not anti-war. They oppose the war in Ukraine, but they're totally fine with giving money to Israel to do atrocious things towards the Palestinian people. I was right about Tulsi Gabbard. And I have no problem doing my victory lap about this. I was right about Tulsi Gabbard, and I tried to explain to people, just because she doesn't want American troops to be harmed, just because she's against what's happening with Russia and Ukraine, that doesn't mean she is anti-war. You change that country to a Muslim or Arabic country, and all of a sudden she's totally fine with you wiping them out. But some have made predictions that Tulsi Gabbard would be someone that he would pick as vice president. Honestly, they agree on the Israel front. They both have no sympathy for the Palestinian people. They agree on that front. Both of them are kissing the ass of Netanyahu. They're totally fine with that. And they both agree in reference to not giving funding to Ukraine. So I could see him picking her or someone like her. Now we go to Cornel West. Now, Cornel West, as we all know, Peter Dowd did resign as campaign manager in Cornel West's campaign. Cornel West has actually announced new leadership in reference to his campaign, which seems to be a coalition of people. He said, excited to introduce a first of its kind cooperative campaign management model led by a dynamic quartet. Anthony Carifa Rogers Wright, Sienna Dent, Edwin De Jesus, and Madeline Merritt. Just as Brother Coltrane's quartet reshaped jazz, this team symbolizes a new era of political engagement rooted in truth, justice, and love. Let us work together for transformative leadership that prioritizes people over profits, communities over corporations, and democracy over duopoly. So he does have new campaign management, but I got to say this. I think what needs to happen in reference to Cornel West, I think Cornel West needs to start hosting rallies. And I say this because RFK Jr., Marianne Williamson have been hosting rallies this whole time. Cornel West has been on the ground in reference to some of the strikes that have happened, the Palestinian marches, etc. So he's been involved with those things. But I think that Cornel West needs to have a rally for his campaign, and that has not happened yet. It is now November. We are now moving into the holiday season. And I think all you guys know, once you move into the holiday season, this is where you start to lose people. So then you have to ramp up again, come back next year, January, after the holidays. You don't have as much time to get some of these things done because before you know it, next November will be here sooner than you think. So if my advice, I think that Cornel West should have already hosted rallies by now, campaign rallies. That's my take on that. Now, he did speak recently at the Palestine march in LA. And I want you to hear what he had to say in reference to Palestine. And it's tricky because it's like Cornel West is really good on the issue of Israel and Palestine. He's really good on that issue. RFK Jr. is not good on that issue. Marianne Williamson, she kind of in the middle with that issue. Sometimes she says some good things about it. Sometimes I'm just kind of like, what? You know, that kind of thing. But I feel like he's really good on that particular issue. I really like the platform that he has, which I've talked about on this show before. But at the same time, the campaign has to have movement. You have to do rallies. You have to that's how you're going to get the word out more. And right now, when comparing it to the other candidates that he's running against, they've been doing that. So right now, it may not seem like they're behind, but right now, Cornel West's campaign is behind when you're comparing them to the other campaigns that are already in this race. So those rallies need to happen in some way, shape, or form. I can tell you, as someone who lives in New England, RFK Jr. has been hosting rallies nonstop. Whether it's been Massachusetts, whether it's been New Hampshire, he has been hosting rallies nonstop. That's why he's doing so well in New Hampshire, just FYI. But this was the speech that Dr. West gave in LA. Listen to this.
I wish you could see how beautiful you look from here. But let the word go forth here and now that we stand with our brothers and sisters and siblings dealing with unbelievable assault and attack, genocidal on the one hand, but 75 years of it, and we still stand tall, they still stand tall, because anytime, every day people straighten their backs up, they're going somewhere because folk can't ride our back unless it's bent, and we are standing in solidarity. I come from a great people, a black people, been terrorized and traumatized for 400 years, dishing out love warriors, freedom fighters, wounded healers, and joy spreaders every generation. And I simply say that in the name of all of those freedom fighters who came before, for me on the chocolate side, but always in solidarity with any oppressed people, no matter what color, no matter what gender, no matter what nation, because we're talking about spiritual grounds, political grounds, and most importantly, Courage. We're here to be courageous, to lift our voices in solidarity with those. And we have to remind these narrow-minded politicians of Biden and Congress and corporate media that for us, a precious Palestinian baby has exactly the same value as any precious baby in the world. We don't care who, black, white, indigenous, it could be Ethiopian, it could be Iranian, it could be Guatemalan. We stand here for the human. And when you stand for the human, you got to tell the truth. And the truth is predicated on not hating anybody. It's predicated on hating any occupation, any subjugation, any oppression. Don't let any of these mainstream folk try to manipulate you and say, you hate Jewish brothers and sisters, you hate an Israeli occupation. You hate an Israeli genocidal attack on our precious siblings, Palestinian siblings in Gaza. That's where we stand, and we shall forever stand, and some of us will be faithful unto death, just like those in Gaza standing up and faithful unto death. That's what this struggle is about, and we look and think of the 3,300 precious Palestinian babies. Oh my God, we don't have a language for it. We don't have words for it. All we have is our example. All we have is our stance. All we have is each other. That's why we call for ceasefire immediately.
That's another thing. RFK Jr. is not calling for a ceasefire. I don't know what Marianne's called. I got to go back and check. I think Marianne did release a video quickly about it. But right now, he seems to be the only person I see calling for a ceasefire. I have to double check with Marianne's, though.
Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! We call for an end of the siege, end the siege, end the blockade immediately! And end the vicious occupation immediately. And let us have the self-determination of Palestinian brothers and sisters. And as we learn how to live with Israeli brothers and sisters, there's got to be equal dignity, equal rights, equal access, equal across the board. Wow, beautiful it is on this lovely day in Los Angeles to let the world know, no matter how grim it is, we are still fighting. We are still free.
All right. Great speech there from Dr. West. But like I said, like Dr. West should be at rallies, like or holding his own rallies for his campaign. And I think his poll numbers would be higher than they are now. You know, like RFK Jr. has been in New Hampshire, been all over New England, like multiple times. Like Cornel West should be holding rallies in New Hampshire, in Georgia, just strictly for his campaign, just for the campaign. Like, yes, I know he wants to create a movement and there's other things he wants to do in reference to activism. And I totally support all that. But the rallies for the campaign should have started already. And that has not happened. But what did you guys think? Let's take a look at this poll. If the presidential election were today, who would you vote for? 3% said Marianne Williamson. 12% said RFK Jr., 48% said Cornel West, but the shocking part is 37% of you said you are not voting. Very interesting. Very interesting. These numbers are very, very telling.